People just recently sold their stuff, quit their jobs, and waited for the end after a preacher blew up online saying the rapture was coming. A self-proclaimed prophet led his followers from Colorado all the way to Jerusalem, convinced an earthquake would end the world. And in Colombia, 100 people vanished into the mountains waiting for UFOs to rescue them from the apocalypse. These are people who said they saw the end of the world and vanished. First up, we have rapture talk. This was really stupid, wasn't it? The amount of people who not only fell for this, but were legitimately preparing for it, going as far as to sell all their assets. It just makes me deeply concerned for the fate of humanity. Not in a biblical sense, in like we're so dumb and have no idea how to save ourselves kind of sense. If you avoid social media or you're watching this in the future, well, back in September of this year, TikTok exploded with the hashtag #RaptureTalk, all around a South African preacher named Joshua Mhlakela, predicting the world would end on September 23rd or the 24th, and there were people going all in on this. Some were selling their cars, quitting their jobs, leaving notes for whoever was left behind with instructions on how to survive the apocalyptic hellscape that would surely await all the non-believers. Robert Cornwall, a minister, explained that this kind of makes sense. When the world feels chaotic, with political instability, the economy, in the toilet, wars, and just an increasing uncertainty, people get drawn to the idea that, well, Jesus might swoop in and just save them before the hard times hit. Matthew Gabriel at Virginia Tech added that apocalyptic predictions always spike when life feels messy. Not too surprising. When the dates passed, though, without anything happening, most of us were like, yeah, y'all knew we were going to wake up this morning. Other people cried or did some heavy coping by trying to find other ways to reinterpret the prophecy, which sociologists say is a pattern that's been repeating for hundreds and hundreds of years. Predict, fail, reinterpret, and then predict again. We never learn. Back in the 80s, a guy named Monte Kim Miller started a group in Colorado called the Concerned Christians. At first, it was meant to push back against New Age religions and what they saw as anti-Christian ideas, but over time it morphed into a doomsday kind of cult. Miller claimed he was the prophet of the Lord and that God spoke through him. The group became obsessed with interpreting world events through the Bible. They believed the collapse of the Soviet Union marked the time of the end. Then in 1998, Miller predicted a massive earthquake that would wipe out a city. It didn't happen, but instead of giving up, members packed up and moved to Jerusalem. Between 60 and 80 people vanished from Colorado around October of that year. By January 1999, Israeli authorities arrested and deported them during a crackdown called Operation Walk on Water, aimed at protecting a mosque from extremist Christian groups. In 1999, at least 100 members of a religious cult vanished in northern Colombia after heading to the Sierra Nevada mountains, convinced a UFO would save them from the end of the world. Relatives told reporters that their loved ones left willingly. One mother told reporters at the time, quote, "My daughter told me she had to leave because a cataclysm was going to occur, and that she had to go to a high place to meet extraterrestrials who would save them from the end of the world," end quote. The group, known as the Stella Maris Church, described itself as Gnostic, and they split into two groups over a weekend to make the trek. Police said reports came in that the members had disappeared, but said there was no sign of, a mass unaliving or coercion, so no search was launched. Some family members accused Rogelio Pera, the head of the cult, of taking advantage of his followers, forcing them to cut ties with their families and swindle them out of property. A woman named Mariela Tovar told the press, quote, "Two leaders told my daughter Liliana that she was God's chosen one and made her change her name to Stella Maris to brainwash her. She was convinced she was going to make contact with flying saucers." Harold Camping was a Christian radio preacher who kept predicting the world was going to end. Obviously, he kept getting it wrong. Back in 1994, he said it would happen in early September. When that didn't happen, he changed it to the end of September, then moved it to October. His biggest prediction came in 2011. He told his followers that May 21st was the day Christ would return and all non-believers would face eternal punishment, saying, "Well, the spiritual judgment happened on May 21st. We've all been assessed. They're getting everyone's paperwork together, but get excited because in October, that's when the physical rapture is gonna happen." Well, May 21st came and went. and nothing happened. When October rolled around, the world was still spinning, and Camping had already quit his radio job a few days earlier. Back in the 1840s, a man named William Miller, a farmer turned preacher, got it in his head that Christ was coming back. It worked out that the second coming would happen sometime between March 1843 and March of 1844. People took him seriously. Tens of thousands sold their farms, dressed in white robes, and climbed hills to watch for Jesus. When March 21st, 1844 came and went, and nothing happened, Miller admitted that he'd messed up the exact timing, but still insisted that the prophecy itself was real. So he and his followers reevaluated things, this time picking October 22nd of 1844. That day went down in history, though, as the Great Disappointment. Most of them just gave up on Miller and walked away. Yes, some. Others still stuck around for some reason and decided maybe Jesus didn't show up on Earth like they predicted, but had come in some spiritual way instead. That's that reassessing thing. Eventually, this led to the start of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is still around today. Herbert W. Armstrong was the guy who started the Worldwide Church of God. He was obsessed with figuring out when the world would end. He called out multiple dates over the years: 1936, 1943, 1972, and 1975. His most famous prediction came in 1956 with a booklet called 1975 in Prophecy. Basic summary: Christ is coming and the world as we know it is about to end. Some seriously believed the apocalypse was right around the corner and started preparing their lives for it. When 1975 rolled around and the world didn't explode, they were just so disappointed. Some left the church, others stuck around and tried to rationalize it. Armstrong didn't admit he was wrong, but the church slowly started shifting focus. Instead of specific doomsday dates, they leaned more into, all the other stuff in the Bible there is to talk about. Even with all the failed predictions, though, Armstrong stayed in charge until he died in 1986. Back in 2007, a Russian doomsday cult called the Penza Recluses, also known as Heavenly Jerusalem, decided to completely cut themselves off from the world. Founded by Pyotr Kuznetsov, the group broke from the Russian Orthodox Church, saying it wasn't strict enough. They banned processed food, TV, money, passports, and barcodes because they believed all those things were linked to the devil. And I can see the argument for pretty much everything on that list. I'm not saying I agree, but I can see it. TV, Satan's coming through the media to get you, money, obviously, greed, but passports? Satan want you to take that trip to Cancun? In November of 2007, though, about 30 members holed up in a cave, convinced the world was ending in May of 2008. Kuznetsov wasn't with them, though. He'd been arrested, but he told them to stay hidden, pray, and just wait. Police and the news camped outside the cave through the freezing Russian winter, worried the group might try to blow themselves up if anyone tried to intervene. By late March 2008, the first members started leaving. 7 women were treated by emergency workers. 3 days later, 14 more came out after melting snow caused part of the cave to collapse. Kuznetsov ended up in a psychiatric hospital, reportedly attempting to take his own life after realizing his prediction had failed. Some of the cult members died inside the cave, which then released toxic fumes as the bodies decayed. By May 16th, the last 9 members finally came out. The cave was later destroyed for safety reasons. In the early 70s, a music teacher named Marshall Applewhite met a nurse named Bonnie Nettles, and that meeting changed their lives forever. Applewhite had just lost his job and gone through a rough divorce, and Nettles was deep into astrology, seances, and a bunch of other weird crap, so they hit it off instantly, both convinced that they'd known each other in a past life. Nettles told them that their meaning had been foretold by beings from another world, and from there, the two built an entirely new belief system. They started calling themselves the Two, and told people they'd been chosen to fulfill a prophecy, that they were the 2 witnesses from the book of Revelation. They said Earth was about to be recycled, and that only those who transcended their human form could reach what they called the next level, a higher plane of existence where extraterrestrial beings lived. They preached this all across the US, gathering a small group of followers who gave up their possessions, families, fashion sense, and names. After Nettles passed away, though, Applewhite continued to lead the group, now called Heaven's Gate, believing they'd soon reunite beyond this world, and by the mid-90s the group moved into a mansion near San Diego waiting for a sign. When Comet Hale-Bopp appeared in 1997, Applewhite told his followers that a spacecraft was trailing behind it, their ride to the next level. This all culminated with them taking their own lives, in one of the most infamous mass self-inflicted unalivings in modern history. In 1953, a Chicago housewife named Dorothy Martin claimed she was getting messages through automatic writing from an alien named Sananda, who was basically a higher form of Jesus. Sananda warned her that a massive, world-ending flood was coming on December 21st, 1954. Martin quickly gathered a small, dedicated group known as the Seekers. We're told that on the night of the flood, a flying saucer would land to rescue them, lifting the faithful to safety while everyone else drowned. The followers quit their jobs, sold everything they owned, and cut off all their skeptical family members. They huddled at Martin's house on the evening of December 20th, removing all metal objects like zippers and belt buckles to avoid interfering with the saucer's magnetic field. Of course, logical. Sell all your stuff because you're about to die. I just don't understand these people. Anyway, they waited all night, midnight passed, then dawn on the 21st, and the world was still there. But in the awkward, tired silence, Martin had a breakthrough. She claimed Sananda sent a new message. The group's extreme faith had actually saved the world. Their collective light was so powerful that God had called off the catastrophe. Hooray, they all said. Hey, maybe they were right. Maybe we should thank them for this. In 1997, a journalist named Michael Drosnin released a book called The Bible Code. His whole claim was that if you skipped letters at certain intervals in the Hebrew Bible, you could uncover hidden messages predicting future events. And the code had been written by aliens, of course. The big prophecy was that a global nuclear war would kick off in 2006. His book sold pretty well. Warner Bros. Even purchased the rights to it. We're going to produce a movie, but the script was never approved. Apparently, it was kind of out there. Not really sure what they were expecting. Well, 2006 came and went with no nuclear war. Most people were not surprised, especially all the mathematicians and computer experts who just tore his book apart. One of them, Dr. Brendan McKay, showed that if you used Drosnin's exact technique, you could find hidden prophecies in basically any book. Just to make a point, McKay found the phrase "the code is a fraud" hidden in the same Bible text Drosnin had used. With all that said though, I've been your host James. I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.